the Denver Broncos still have some concerns with the quarterback position. Case Keenum isn't exactly exciting to fans, and didn't have the year the front office had hoped when they signed him. Not all of that is on Keenum, as the coaching staff continuously push him to do things that don't fit his strengths as a player. Despite that, he still could have been better than he was. In his end-of-season press conference, John Elway said that he's going to shake some trees to try and find that guy at quarterback. There are two ways the Broncos can do that. Denver can either find a guy who is already in the NFL, which we're going to cover today, or in the draft, which a follow-up article will cover. Before we get to who might be out there on the NFL market, let's first look at the details of Case Keenum's contract. Biggest aspect to analyze when talking about the Broncos pursuing a QB that's already in the NFL is the money. Currently, Keenum costs the Broncos $21 million on the cap. If Denver were to cut him, that would free up $11 million with a $10 million dead cap hit. Can't see Denver eating that up for the year when they can keep him and get out cleanly after this year. What's next for the Denver Broncos? Don't miss out on any news and analysis. Take a second to sign up for our free Broncos newsletter, delivered 3 times daily. So the only way I can see Keenum not being in a Broncos uniform is if he's traded. If he were to get traded, there is only $3 million in dead money with $18 million freed up. That would be enticing to the Broncos, but they would have to find a partner outside of one team. We'll get to this team later. I can't see there being a market for Keenum where another team would be willing to take him on with his current contract. So basically, I expect Keenum to be a quarterback for the Broncos next year. Maybe not starter, but on the 53-man roster, unless that one team comes calling. Before diving in on the other options, I just want to say that not all of the quarterbacks I'm going to talk about are legit options, if any. These are all QBs that fans or other analysts have mentioned as a possibility for Denver. I'm going to break down why each QB may be, may not be, or certainly are not an option. I've had many fans ask me questions about these QBs, so some of the players discussed today will be me explaining why they're not an option. Let's start with the most attractive QBs. Nick Foles and the Eagles are in a very unusual situation. A year ago, he came in and led Philly to a Super Bowl, and this year he came in and led them to the playoffs and a playoff victory already. If he leads another Super Bowl run, the situation is going to get even more unusual. Either way, the Eagles have a decision to make on their quarterback room. Foles' contract makes this situation even more unusual. The Eagles have an option on his contract that if they pick up, means he gets a $20 million salary for 2019, and they have to pick it up or decline it a month before the start of the new league year. If they don't, he is an unrestricted free agent, and even if they do, he can still become a free agent. When Foles signed his extension, there was a player void that can see him become a free agent, even with the option picked up, if he pays back to $2 million signing bonus. The Eagles have a big decision to make, and it isn't one that I envy. 2 quarterbacks, both of whom have shown a lot. The Eagles can go either way, but they don't have much time to make a decision. If Foles is the guy they let go, I can't see Denver jumping in on Foles. Foles is going to be seeking a contract bigger than what Brock Osweiler got, and may end up being an even more foolish move. It's hard to see Denver giving a deal over $20 million per year for multiple years to a quarterback that has failed everywhere outside of Philly. The other quarterback in this equation, Carson Wentz, is a young quarterback but has dealt with some serious injury concerns. Philly moved up to go get him in the draft in 2016, but it's hard to argue that they have fared better under Wentz than Foles. Another run by Foles and the Eagles, it is hard to justify sticking with Wentz. If Wentz is available for trade or not, Denver has to make a call here. If they get told no, then they get told no. There is no harm in asking what it would take to get him. He is easy to move via trade and is on the 4th year of his deal. Philly would eat only a little over $4 million in dead money while saving a little over $4 million in cap. What this comes down to is trade cost. I would expect Denver to want to protect themselves in case of another injury by Wentz, while the Eagles are going to want to get quite a bit back. Plus, if they do make Wentz available, about every team needing a quarterback is going to come calling. Wentz is perfect for the offense the Broncos want to run, and they have the young talent around him to grow with him. Getting Wentz would be the best-case scenario for the Broncos this offseason to find a quarterback. With him being on the fourth year of his deal, Denver acquiring him would also mean they acquire the ability to pick up the fifth-year option on his rookie contract, and give them another year to evaluate their options with the young quarterback, or if he gets badly hurt again, they can move on. Injury concerns make it so the Broncos would really want to protect themselves in trade value being sent. There are 3 reasons why Blake Bortles isn't and won't be an option for the Broncos: money, play, talent, lateral move. Simply put, he wouldn't represent an upgrade for Denver. Money: if the Jaguars somehow manage to trade Bortles, they take $10 million in debt and free up $11 million. A straight cut is even worse than that. The rest of his contract isn't the prettiest, and not something many teams, if any, will want to take on. Denver basically can pay Bortles and Keenum the same amount as it would cost to just keep Keenum. Play: Blake Bortles is a bad quarterback. You can't watch his tape and think otherwise. He isn't a starter in the NFL, and I question as to if he should even be a backup quarterback. There has been little, if any, development of his ability since has come to the NFL. Lateral move: I would be hard-pressed to say Bortles is an upgrade over Keenum. Not that Keenum is good, it's just that Bortles is that bad. The NFL has seen a way they can get solid play from Keenum, but they haven't seen that with Bortles. This is one quarterback that will be on a new team come 2019 season. What team and how he gets there is the question. Joe Flacco is 33 years old, and will be 34 on January 16th. His play in the regular season can leave a lot to be desired, but when the chips are down in the playoffs, he often answers. He is 10-5 in the playoffs, which includes 4 years of 1-1. As Chris Harris Jr. of the Broncos said, it is hard to bet against Flacco in the playoffs. Flacco has a good arm that can really stretch defenses. It would be great for Denver to help open up their run game, plus he has familiarity and success in the offensive scheme Denver wants to run. Flacco for Denver makes a lot of sense for both parties, if the financial aspect of things can match up. Flacco carries a $26.5 million cap hit for 2019, and if Baltimore cuts him, they eat $16 million in dead money and free up $10.5 million, and this is the same for a trade. This is going to be hard to swallow for Baltimore as they look to move on. It would be even harder for Denver if they looked at him. Denver needs more than Flacco from a roster-building perspective, and there is no way the Ravens would take on Keenum. Denver would have to find another way to move Keenum, but there simply isn't a market for him. This makes sense for both sides, but on paper, it is hard to see it coming to fruition. Would the Raiders trade their starting quarterback to a team in the division? I highly doubt it. However, Derek Carr is a pretty popular name mentioned by fans when it comes to the Broncos trying to find a quarterback. Carr is young, not majorly expensive when you factor in the rising cost for a quarterback, and has had some solid play in his pro career. The Raiders can cut him, or trade him, and incur only $7.5 million in dead money and free up $15 million in space. There are issues there between John Gruden and Carr, so a parting of ways will come at some point down the road. It may not be this year, as the Raiders look to find a replacement for him in the draft, but it could. Carr has a pretty easy contract to work around in these days of the $150 million quarterbacks. The Raiders will field plenty of calls about his eligibility, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see if Denver calls. Still, it'd be a surprise if these two longtime division rivals made such a blockbuster trade. Here we have the first actual free agent of the group. Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't under contract for the 2019 season, and probably won't have a lot of teams calling for his services. If Denver is able to trade Case Keenum, and they don't get another veteran quarterback, Fitzpatrick may be an option for them. Of course they would have to pair him with a young, likely rookie, quarterback, and the 37-year-old quarterback isn't going to have many years left in the NFL. There is even a chance the journeyman finally decides to hang up the cleats this offseason. Another quarterback that seems destined to be on a new team. Ryan Tannehill's contract, mostly the restructure he did last year, makes it hard to trade him or cut him. Either way, the Dolphins would eat $13.4 million dead and free up $13.1 million. This makes me think Miami will keep him around for one more year before actually moving on. With their salary cap situation, it is hard to see them being willing to eat that much, especially without having a viable quarterback option to take his place. I don't think this one happens, but this is the best option in a trade for Keenum. The Giants head coach Pat Shurmur was Vikings offensive coordinator when Keenum had the best year of his career. He knows how to get the most out of Keenum. If the Giants decide to move on from Eli Manning, they could be looking for a new backup veteran quarterback. Who better than Keenum with his familiarity to Shurmur? Denver and the Giants could make a swap here, but I think there are other teams that are going to be pushed harder for Manning than Denver. If Denver did trade for Manning, it'd likely be a quarterback-for-quarterback trade. The Giants would eat $6.2 million in dead money and free up $17 million in cap space. This all comes down to whether New York really wants to move on from Manning, or have him in the mentor role for the next young quarterback. I could see the Giants going either way, but if they decide to move on, I don't see Denver being in on it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did explore other veteran options, but it depends on finding someone to take Keenum, and the Giants are probably the only option for that, and that's only if Manning is gone. So if I have to guess right now, Case Keenum will be a Broncos quarterback in the 2019 season. There are just too many dominoes to fall, and roads to cross. The only quarterback on this list who may join Keenum in Denver, with both being on the roster, would be Carson Wentz. Do I see it happening? No, but again, the Broncos should ask there. To me, the best option for the Broncos would be to wait until the draft, and that may be in 2020 and not this year. However, a follow-up article on quarterback options for 2019 draft will be coming. Alright, let's get the unrealistic options out of the way. There is no way the Steelers move on from Big Ben Roethlisberger. The reason I think some Broncos fans mention him is because of the current issues in the Steelers locker room involving Antonio Brown, plus Roethlisberger's injury history. Roethlisberger has a close relationship with Mike Tomlin and others in that franchise. He has done a lot for them. There is just no way they decide to move on from him. Financially, either traded or cut, Big Ben would cost $6.2 million in dead money and free up $17 million. Despite this, I still don't see the Steelers moving him. Pittsburgh is close to contending, and Big Ben is a big reason for that. They won't move him unless they are going to blow it up and rebuild. This is one line of thought that needs to be laid to rest. Of course, if this move were to be made, you'd assume Denver would send Keenum plus picks to Pittsburgh in exchange for Big Ben. What is the trade value for a soon-to-be 37-year-old quarterback who has been dealing with injuries the last few years? I can't see Denver offering up enough for the Steelers to even consider it. Needless to say, there just isn't a match here for a potential change of quarterback. Once again, it is time to get rid of a ridiculous speculation as we work down towards the solid possibilities for Denver in 2019. The soon-to-be 30-year-old quarterback is entrenched in Carolina. There is little that can possibly change that. Carolina's system is made for Cam Newton at quarterback. He played really well this season and the team has other issues to try and fix while they have a good player at quarterback. The finances of this are not like some other situations. With only $8.50 in dead money, the Panthers can save $14.7 million in cap if they move Newton. That isn't all that bad. It just comes back to how this team is built. Newton for Denver makes some sense, though. The Broncos would theoretically be able to run an offense that fits a lot of their other young players. But Carolina simply isn't in a rebuild mode and giving up on the quarterback who still has 5+ years left. Like with Ben Roethlisberger, there is a serious question as to value in trade. Denver wouldn't trade for a quarterback with a big contract and keep Keenum? Keenum doesn't have value out there in the NFL world, so what else would Denver have to send? I can't see them willing to give up what the Panthers would feel is enough. Unlike with the first two, there is an actual chance in hell of this one happening, but only if circumstances align. There aren't financial implications of cutting or trading Andy Dalton, unlike Newton and Roethlisberger. He just would free up a lot of salary cap room for Cincy, without taking on dead money. So there is a financial motivation for Cincy to possibly move on, but would they be ready to do so? The Bengals are going to be looking at a new head coach, and while he may want to get his own quarterback, it's unlikely he moves on from Andy Dalton without an option in place. Jeff Driscoll isn't going to be that kind of option. I can't imagine Keenum being that option either if they were to make a trade of Dalton for Keenum. As with the first two, it is hard to see Denver and the Bengals matching on a price for the trade. So if the new coach does decide he doesn't want to work with Dalton, and the Bengals do decide to cut him, maybe Denver jumps in. Dalton would be a hard sell, but he would be a slight upgrade over Keenum. John Elway needs to find a quarterback of the future, and while Dalton is only 31, there isn't a lot of time left for him and the window is small. It's hard to see Denver have interest here.